Coming up on Movieology, Little Red Riding Hood is eaten by the big bad wolf that is Hollywood. Will Little Red ever survive this demoralizing attack on her virtue? Or will she be cursed beyond recognition? Find out right now on Movieology. Today's episode is brought to you by American Vision. For a chance to win a $20 gift certificate to American Vision's online store, be sure to like Movieology on Facebook, then post a comment to this video within 24 hours. American Vision has a vast array of phenomenal worldview-related books and DVDs available at AmericanVision.com, so be sure to enter to win the $20 gift certificate as soon as you've watched today's episode. Welcome to Movieology, your ticket to engaging the spectacular world of movies from a bedrock of biblical truth. I'm your host, Joseph Darnell. You can catch Movieology at movieology.tv, at facebook.com/movieology, and twitter.com/movieologytv. So you're probably wondering, Joe, have you lost your mind? You bothered to watch Red Riding Hood? Of course you would be thinking this if you knew anything about the movie. Its merits are questionable at the outset, and I understand you critiquing my sanity. But here's the thing, I didn't want to review Red Riding Hood. My movie of choice for this past week's opening weekend was Jane Eyre. I had done all my research to find the showtimes in the theater, and then, strangely, Jane Eyre vanished from practically every theater known to man. Of course, Jane Eyre's website itself is still standing, and it showed it was still released March 11th, but it became a highly limited release at that. In the coming weeks, it's going to be released in more theaters, and since Jane Eyre has a lot of good press, I still intend to review it soon. So without Jane Eyre, my options were these: Red Riding Hood and Mars Needs Moms, which in my opinion meant that there was really just one option. Thus, I bring to you Red Riding Hood. Watch this and weep with me. Valerie is a beautiful young woman, torn between two guys. She's in love with the brooding outsider Peter, but her parents have arranged for her a marriage to the wealthy Henry. While plotting to run away together, the lovers are told that Valerie's sister has been murdered by the werewolf that prowls the dark forest. The villagers have an uneasy truce with the beast, offering it animal sacrifices in exchange for leaving the people alone. But the wolf is upping the stakes by taking human lives. Father Solomon comes to help kill the wolf, but Solomon's arrival brings unintended consequences as he warns that the wolf, who takes human form by day, is one of the townsfolk. As the death toll rises, Valerie begins to suspect that the werewolf is someone close to her. Valerie learns that she alone can communicate with the beast. This connection unrelentingly draws them together, making Valerie both suspect and bait. Red Riding Hood stars Amanda Seyfried and Gary Oldman, and was directed by Catherine Hardwicke. Hood is like a cross between the traditional story of Little Red Riding Hood, M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, and yes, the Twilight Saga movies. Imagine that! The werewolf in Hood is represented as an evil version of the Native American wolf boys in Twilight. The leading love interests are like Twilight's, even got the same hokey good looks. But these characters are more interesting and likable. The townspeople of Hood fear the werewolf and respond to it much like the people in M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. If you don't like any of those movies, you're probably not going to like Hood. If you like any or all of them, you may still not like Hood. Something that stood out to me from the very beginning were the costumes and set designs. Characters' clothing and village houses are meant to appear medieval, but they are far too clean and proper for the rough conditions of the characters' poor provincial town. So the costumes in the set give it this feel of artifice and play acting, nothing authentic like the 2010 Robin Hood movie. One of the predominant characters is the movie's adaptation of the traditional hunter of the Little Red Riding Hood story. Father Solomon is a man of the cloth who is mentally scarred from fighting werewolves. He wrestles with his past for killing significant others who turned werewolf. Because he fights werewolves for a living to defend the weak and the innocent in a medieval manner, he ends up harming the innocent and causes more death and bloodshed than necessary in the battles against the wolf. He justifies a lot of wickedness, all for the greater good, not just violence, but other unjust, immoral activities. Way too much of the movie is preoccupied with his overbearing violence. All of the characters are highly suspicious and superstitious. This is akin to much of the faults we know existed in medieval times. The church leads organized harm, a celebration that takes place after the village believes if killed the wolf leads to drunken revelry. There's a miniature version of the Salem witch trials. Good guys kill and torture, not just to serve justice, but to carry out vengeance. Blessings and cursings are frequently tossed around in a superstitious sense, and most every plot turn by the end is led by base depravity. So while the traditional Little Red Riding Hood is deliberately a morality tale, or at least a warning to children about talking to strange wolves and wandering off alone into the forests of life, this movie has no redemptive point. No, really, it's hard for me to admit because I'm always finding them in movies. Hood is married to Freudianism. It basically wraps evolutionary-based atheism and sex obsession into one. To add violent excitement, Hood has superstitious nonsense about werewolves. The writer and director of Hood have stated that the film draws inspiration from Bruno Bettelheim's book The Uses of Enchantment, which analyzes fairy tales in terms of Freudian psychology. The book recasts Little Red Riding Hood's motif in terms of classic Freudian analysis and shows how fairy tales educate, support, and liberate the emotions of children. Most of the liberation going on in Hood is in the areas of all things vice, corrupt, and immoral. God's purpose for the church, which is a relevant part of the story, is completely lost while being sucked into the vortex of all things Freudian and sensual. Valerie is ultimately liberated from her parents, township, peers, religion, and all social norms, to run off with the cursed guy that can no longer live in God's good graces. A life well lived, to Valerie, is about making out with the bad boy forever after. Therefore, I give Red Riding Hood just 1 star in the Echelon 5-star rating scale. Hood attempts to outdo Twilight by turning essentially the same story inside out, but it doesn't work because Freudianism is devoid of absolutes, morality, and God. The story just can't be all that appealing. It's a man-centric universe where anything goes, and if anything goes, nothing really matters. And if nothing really matters, then why do we care? And how do we know anything? Everything is reduced to sexuality and violence. I'd love to know what you think about Red Riding Hood. Does this movie change your view of the classic story? Is Red Riding Hood something that you would let your daughter go watch, let alone your grandma? Tell us. Comment on this video on our website at movieology.tv, our Facebook profile, facebook.com/movieology, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/movieologytv. Thanks for watching. I'm Joseph Darnell. Until next time, you have been watching Movieology. But her parents have arranged for her a marriage to a wealthy Henry. Well, marry to a wealthy Henry. I'm sorry. I'm in such a good mood. Think about Darth Sidious.
Wow. I think you set the record now.